They didn't need to say it out loud, I knew they were disappointed. No shouting. No big arguments. Just this quiet, steady pulling away, like I was a book they'd already closed. It felt like I'd walked off stage in the middle of a performance, and nobody bothered to call, "Hey, wait, come back." At my brother's engagement dinner, I ended up in the loneliest seat in the house, shoved against the wall where the table almost ran out. My dress kept catching on this old baseboard heater that hadn't worked in years. The light from the candles flickered down the middle of the table, but it never made it to where I sat. I don't think anyone noticed when I walked in. I didn't expect them to, they hadn't noticed much for a while. Not when I left the residency. Not when I packed up and moved. Not when my answers shrank down to a tired "I'm fine." The chicken was dry. Napkins folded into little triangles like hotel service. My mother's earrings sparkled the same way they always did, like they'd rehearsed their entrance. My brother, Michael, stood tall and proud, drowning in laughter and backslaps. I kept my head down, slicing up vegetables, nodding if someone happened to glance my way. I wasn't rude. Just sort of faded. Somewhere between the second glass of wine and dessert, John, Michael's fiancé, tilted her head toward me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Wait," she said, squinting. "You're Mary Tordy." And in that strange, frozen second, the entire room finally remembered I existed. I used to be the one they pinned their hopes on. Mary Tordy. Oldest child. Honor roll since birth. Supposed to be a doctor. The one who missed prom to study for her AP Bio final and still made it to every family photo with a smile. Everyone used to say I was going somewhere big. Funny how none of them ever asked where that road might end if the lights went out along the way. College? I crushed it. Graduated top of my class, laser-focused. Landed one of the hardest residencies out there. I remember the exact moment I got the acceptance email. My dad gave me that manly pat on the back thing, the kind that means, "I'm proud of you, but I'm not gonna say it," and my mom practically turned into a one-woman press release. For them, it was the start of something golden. But behind the white coat and the all-nighters, something started unraveling. It wasn't the patience. It wasn't the pressure. It was the quiet that followed me home every night. The feeling that I had to keep putting on a show just to keep up with a version of me they'd already made up in their heads. When I quit, it wasn't some dramatic meltdown. I didn't throw anything. I just folded up my white coat, stuck it in the back of my closet, and sat on the floor like someone trying to remember what silence used to feel like before it got this loud. Nobody called to check in. When I told my parents I was leaving the program, the phone went still. No outburst. Just my mom whispering. "So, what are you going to do now?" And honestly, I didn't know. I ended up in a tiny apartment above a flower shop in Portland. No elevator, no trophies, no plaques, just chipped windows, rain tapping the glass, and a kettle that took its sweet time to boil. Nobody asked where I'd gone. They filled in the blanks on their own. She needed a break. She's figuring stuff out. She gave up medicine. Such a waste. Thanksgiving came. My aunt mentioned Michael's big promotion, twice. No one asked what I'd been up to. I brought a homemade pie that sat untouched at the end of the table like an inside joke I wasn't in on. That winter, I started scribbling things down again. Not stories. Just fragments. Thoughts like, maybe value isn't about what you push through, but what you finally choose to let go of. I didn't expect anyone to get it. They didn't see the new version of me, the one who woke up early to teach old folks how to send an email. The one who showed a woman named Loretta how to join a Zoom call just in time to see her granddaughter graduate from nursing school. That was the life I used to chase. And now I was watching someone else reach that finish line, but from a different kind of front row. And maybe that's the point. Maybe leaving wasn't losing. Maybe, for the first time, I was picking my own path instead of auditioning for theirs. At first, it felt like freefall. No shifts. No charts. No ORs. Just the low hum of the street below and the sweet scent of flowers drifting up through the floor. To stay busy, I started volunteering at the local library. Nothing fancy, just helping seniors figure out their phones or how to log into Facebook. Stuff people my age do without thinking. The first time I helped Mrs. Thomas unlock her iPad, she teared up and said, "I thought this thing hated me. But maybe it just needed someone patient." I held on to that. Helping someone feel less lost in a fast world felt like something real. So I started putting together little workshops. Printed guides in large fonts. Group sessions. Easy steps. And then came BrightBridge. At first, it was just a folder on my desktop. Just a name. A bridge between people who felt invisible and a world that had moved on without asking. I put what little money I had into building a basic site. Bought a cheap ring light, borrowed a microphone, filmed videos in my tiny kitchen. It was clunky, but it worked. Before long, I couldn't keep up with the signups. Veterans, widows, dads who hadn't talked to their kids in years. They called in, nervous but hopeful. At night, I'd read their messages like they were confessions. I FaceTimed with my daughter today. I finally saw my grandson. I sent my first email without asking for help. I don't feel like an idiot anymore. BrightBridge wasn't some big comeback. It wasn't meant to save me. But somewhere along the way, it brought me back to life, one person at a time. Back home? Still crickets. My parents never asked about it. I think they assumed I was doing some small-time tutoring or nonprofit gig. My mom once called it Mary's little side project while chewing salad. She smiled like it was cute. Like I was just playing house. I didn't argue. I've learned something. When people slap a label on you, failure, disappointment, a mess, you don't waste time trying to peel it off. You just build something real. You build something solid enough that it speaks for you. And if they still don't see it? You just keep building. There was a small wooden USB on my desk, smooth and warm like something you'd keep in your pocket on purpose. Cherry wood. A gift from one of the first people I ever helped through BrightBridge. Inside it was everything, every version of the platform, every tweak, every thank you note. A quiet record of something that had actually mattered. I kept it with me. Not to flash around like a trophy, but just in case someone, someday, finally asked me the right question. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I opened an email like I always do, half paying attention. Subject line, Stories That Connect, video submission from H. Jennifer. We got videos all the time, quick clips from families, sweet notes from users. Most were short. A few lines, maybe a smile. Just little glimpses into how BrightBridge was helping people out there in the real world. This one started with two women on a worn floral couch, one young, one older. The younger woman had calm eyes and a voice that didn't waver. "This is my grandmother, Joseph," she said. "She lost her husband last year, and it's been a tough time. But with BrightBridge, she started video calling us every Sunday. She even figured out how to order groceries online." I felt myself breathing slower as the older woman, Joseph, turned to the camera. Her smile was soft but steady. "Thank you, BrightBridge." "Thank you, Mary," she said. "You made me feel like a person again." Then the younger woman leaned gently against her. "We're so grateful." I watched it twice. Then again. And that's when I noticed the name on the submission, John. Michael's fiancé. John. I leaned back in my chair, staring into the quiet of my apartment. Behind me, the kettle clicked off like it was trying to fill the silence. She had no idea who I was, no clue that the platform her grandmother relied on came from the woman her future in-laws rarely mentioned, much less celebrated. She'd found value in something I built, not because anyone pointed her toward it, but because it worked. On its own. And that, right there, that made it more real than any round of applause my mother never gave. I saved the video to the Cherrywood Drive. Gave it a quiet label, recognition without introduction. And I didn't tell a soul. The engagement dinner was scheduled for that Saturday. 3 days before, my mom called me. Her voice was sharp and composed, like she was reading from a script. "Don't be late. 6 o'clock. That new place downtown. Stonecraft or whatever it's called." I hesitated. I don't know if I should come. There was a pause, short enough to seem unfazed, long enough to miss warmth entirely. "Why wouldn't you?" she asked, and before I could answer, she added. "And maybe don't talk too much about your website. John's family is very accomplished. Ivy League, that kind of thing." I nearly laughed. "Got it. I'll leave the buttons at home." She didn't catch the sarcasm. She never does. That night, I opened my closet and stared at rows of muted clothing, black slacks, gray sweaters. Outfits that whispered, "Don't mind me." But tucked way in the back was a forest green dress I hadn't worn in years. Sleek. Sleeveless. Hit just below the knee. The kind of dress that didn't shout, but didn't apologize either. I laid it out on the bed next to the USB, not to make a scene, but to remind myself who I still was, even if no one else saw it. The next morning, another email from my mother. Subject: dress guidance. Inside were images of women in pastel dresses and pearl earrings, all smiling like they'd never once questioned whether they belonged at the table. Nothing too loud. No pantsuits. Something soft and feminine, please. I didn't respond. She wasn't asking. She was managing. And I wasn't following orders anymore. That Friday, I sat at a cafe with Christopher, our newest intern, a freshman still buzzing with curiosity. She had a million questions about user experience for older adults, accessibility features, screen readers. Smart kid. As we were wrapping up, a woman at the next table leaned over. "Sorry to interrupt, are you Mary Twardy? From Brightbridge?" I blinked. Yeah. That's me." She lit up. "My dad uses your site. Sent me a meme the other day." I didn't even know he knew what a meme was. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, a real, honest laugh. First one all week. Maybe I hadn't disappeared. Maybe I'd just been standing in the wrong light. Stonecraft turned out to be exactly what I expected: brass fixtures, hushed ambience, that faint lemon oil and money smell. Even the butter came topped with sea salt, like it had a pedigree. I showed up 10 minutes early. Always do. My mom blinked when she saw me. Not happy. Not upset. Just surprised, like she wasn't sure what to do with my presence. "Oh. You came. You invited me," I said simply. She gave one of those tight little smiles and glanced down at my dress. "It's bold." I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The hostess led me to a long private table, 12 seats, one for each member of our carefully curated guest list. My place was at the very end, near the emergency exit and a tray of backup silverware. Naturally. I unfolded my napkin, settled in, poured myself some water, and waited. Michael and John breezed in 15 minutes later, glowing like a couple in a lifestyle ad. They made the rounds, hugs, cheerful greetings, inside jokes delivered with perfect timing. John hugged me, too. Light, polite. She still didn't know. Dinner kicked off with toasts and champagne. Michael's boss talked about numbers and leadership. John's dad spoke of legacy like it was some priceless relic passed down through perfect bloodlines. I nodded. Smiled when I was supposed to. Kept to the background. Until dessert. A delicate swirl of chocolate and sea salt landed in front of me, and across the table, John looked up. She tilted her head, eyes curious. "I've been meaning to ask, Mary, what is it you do, exactly?" The chatter around us dimmed a little. Just enough to notice. I took a sip of water. Unrushed. Steady. I run a digital platform that helps older adults get online. Things like accessibility tools, tech literacy, ways to stay connected with the people they love. John leaned in slightly, brows knitting. Oh, so, like Zoom classes? More like intuitive systems designed for lasting connection. We prioritize voice control, high-contrast visuals, screen readers. She blinked. What's it called? Silverline. Then everything shifted. Her eyes widened, and the breath hitched in her throat. No. It can't be. Your Silverline? It wasn't a question. It was recognition. I gave the smallest nod. No fanfare. Just the T. Joseph, finally stepping into the light. The room didn't fall silent in an instant. It settled, like the air after a heavy door has quietly shut behind you. She blinked again and spoke my full name, carefully, like a rediscovery. Mary Tordy. Then she brought up the initiative. The user stories. The face behind the software. That was you? Michael looked puzzled. John turned to him, explaining how Silverline had made Sundays brighter for her grandmother. How they'd stayed connected through video chats. How the final months had felt less isolating because of it. Her voice broke gently when she said. She passed away feeling present, not forgotten. No one moved. My mother's hand hovered above her wine glass. Paused mid-reach. Someone set a utensil down too hard. The silence that followed was louder than the noise. Then John said something that echoed like a soft chime in a still room. She gave us more time. She turned to me again, not accusing, just stunned. Why didn't you ever say? I answered softly. It never felt like the moment. Michael, still catching up, leaned forward. I had no idea. I met his eyes. You never asked. There was no malice in it. Just a quiet T. Joseph, finally given breath. That's when things began to shift. One of Michael's colleagues leaned closer. Curious about accessibility options. Another asked whether Silverline could help her father, who struggled with anything more complex than a dial tone. I answered evenly. Calmly. I didn't need to sell it. The work carried its own voice. Across the table, my aunt blinked slowly. Then murmured, almost in awe. That's truly remarkable. My father looked down, focusing on his plate. My mother, still holding her glass, remained wordless. What I felt wasn't triumph. And it wasn't vindication. It was presence. The grounded peace of being seen whole. In a space that once preferred me fragmented or mute. For years, I'd taken up space at tables like this one. Unnoticed. But now, without so much as raising my voice. The narrative turned. Not because I demanded it. Not because I called anyone out. Just because the T. Joseph chose not to stay tucked away any longer. The evening moved forward. Under a strangely gentler kind of light. The once scripted conversations began drifting into unexpected terrain. People asked where the platform operated. How it began. What impact it had during the lockdown years. Names were passed around. Cards exchanged. A few even asked if I'd consider expanding to their region. I answered each with quiet precision. Not pitching, just opening a door. John stayed near, her expression a mix of wonder and quiet pride. I saw the way she looked at Michael. Then at me again. As if the family she thought she knew had redrawn its lines. Later, near the coat rack. Michael caught up to me. He shifted awkwardly, hands deep in his pockets, voice low. I'm sorry we never asked. That was all. No rehearsed speech. No caveats. Just a sentence left open. Like a door that had always been there but never touched. I nodded. Not because it healed anything. But because it was enough. That night, my mother still didn't speak to me directly. But I felt her gaze from across the room. Longer than usual. As if trying to recalibrate a portrait she'd thought long finished. And this time, I didn't shrink. I didn't scramble to fill the stillness. I didn't offer comfort. Let her sit with it. Let them all sit with it. Because sometimes, the twist in the story isn't the apology. It's realizing I no longer need it to move forward. 2 mornings later, I opened my mailbox and found a letter. Real stationery. Ink that bled slightly into the page. The handwriting was unmistakable, my mother's. No subject line. No emoji. Just cream-colored paper, folded once. With my name in full across the front. Inside, her words were careful. Not poetic. Not polished. I watched the video John submitted. I cried, not because I didn't know what you'd built, but because I understood I'd never thought to ask. She continued. I was too focused on what you turned away from to notice what you were turning toward. You did something none of us ever dared. You stumbled, then stood again. And in doing that, you offered something I didn't know people were missing. The sense of being held. Of being truly seen. It wasn't quite an apology. But it was something truer. She signed it simply. Love, Mom. No grand flourish. No request to call. Just the letter, unadorned and hand-delivered. I read it 3 times. Then slid it into the top drawer of my desk. Beside the wooden USB. I didn't frame it. I didn't write back. Because this time, I didn't need her words on a wall to believe them. This time I was already standing inside what I had created. And that was enough. 3 weeks later, I stood at the front of a modest community hall in Clearwater. No spotlight. No cameras. Just 50 folding chairs. And a lukewarm coffee pot perched on a plastic table. The audience was an honest mix. A few older folks. A couple of librarians. And a teenage girl who had brought her grandfather. I spoke about Silverline. Not its numbers. Not its reach. I told them about Mrs. Thomas and her tablet. About the first message that read, I feel capable again. I told them how I once walked away from a life others insisted was mine. And somehow, in doing so, stumbled into one that felt like home. When the room rose in applause, I didn't shed a tear. But I did smile. The kind that begins deep in the spine and slowly unfurls upward. Not for show, but because something inside had aligned. That evening, back at my apartment, I printed a line I'd once saved and fastened it to the fridge with quiet intention. They'll call it abandonment. Until they understand. You were the one carrying the flame. No name. No context. Just the words. Beneath them. My reflection in the steel door. Anchored, softened, whole. Not because their eyes had finally adjusted. But because I had finally stopped needing their vision to recognize my own.